Hey everybody, Omar Macy here from Rap4. Today I want to talk to you about the 468. Many of you now have the 468 basically set up with D-mags and is as it stands in its whole first release. So what we're going to do is we're going to go into pretty much every detail, look at it, how it breaks down, how to troubleshoot, what we've been seeing. Some of you have been getting these things out there, and there's just a little learning curve to the 468 that we want you to know about, and basically just how to work with everything. Again, we'll break it down, we'll show you how to de-air, how to fix anything that needs to be fixed pretty much. It's pretty straightforward, it's a simple system once you know where are the components and what you're looking for. So, alright, so first step with the 468 basically is first breakdown, what you do, how do you take this apart, what are the proper steps to take with the 468. Number one, this marker platform requires that pretty much everything you do always requires you to cock it back, okay? So take this as your primary function that you will always want to do. So before you load a magazine, cock it back. Before you take it apart, cock it back. Before you go into a safe zone, cock it back. Before you work on it, open it, and even close it, cock it back, okay? Cocking it back, it's not just a simple little thing like that. There's quite a bit of a motion here. That's just basically the return spring. Here, let me go ahead and decock it so you know what I'm talking about. So I can push it back like this all day, and some of you may believe that that should have cocked it. Well, you have to take it to that point where it stops, and actually here for the click. And it's tactile and audible, right? So I mean, you can hear it click, but you can also feel it click when it's cocked back. So that's the main thing on this thing. So obviously we remove the magazine. We're going to check if we have any rounds in the chamber. Now there's one way to remove them. Just basically cycle the trap system up and down. And if you have round projectiles, so paintballs, reball, anything of the like, it will just drop down. Okay. Now you don't need to remove them that way. You can also shotgun the receivers and remove it that way. So once again, before you shotgun it, remember to cock it back. So I'm going to go ahead and show you, and then we're going to go back to that because there's a little matter of air that you want to do. You never want to shotgun your marker unless you're certified. It is in your user manual. You never want to shotgun this thing when you have air inside there. Okay, it's an extra added level of responsibility. There are things that can happen if you're cracking it open, so you want to make sure that you don't unless you are certified and or experienced. Okay, so but at this point, if you did shotgun it and you have to remove some rounds, you can just go ahead and push them out through the mag well, and you're round free. You should have no rounds in your chamber. Pretty much that would take care of that. Again, for the more experienced, there's been a question about how to de-air your system. Well, since we are shotgun now, I am able to show you. You're going to remove your bolt. Okay, you are going to remove your bolt carrier pin. Okay, and what you're going to do now, you're going to actually close your receiver once again, just as if it was done. Now you're able to dry fire, but make sure you never do this with a CO2 system, and you want to do this only to remove your tank just when it's seized up to the point, you know, I mean, you have back pressure inside of here. So let me go ahead and show you how to do that. Okay, so now as you can see, since the bolt carrier and bolt are not in place, you can actually dry fire this thing. But this is not something you want to do to just go crazy with it and, you know, just do countless shots. Just go ahead and just do it to the point where you're able to take your tank off. Because again, what you're doing when you're putting some rounds, or at least dry firing it that way, you're kind of relieving some of the pressure on the ASA, and it's just enough to get the system out. Okay, so at this point we're back to square one. You're going to decock it. Well, at this point you can't really cock it back anymore because we already removed the air system. I will show you another method of dry firing. Of course, this is only applicable with the new or the lock bolt system, the chamber system for the 468. I think it's known as Gen 2 out and about. Okay. Alright, so we're pretty much at this point, we're broken down to our upper receiver, lower receiver. Another thing you want to make sure that you are aware of is this seal between the upper and lower receiver. This seal is there for air efficiency, so you don't have air coming from the valve just kind of spreading out through the inside of your receivers. It will also give you an increase of about 30 feet per second, which means you're consuming that much less air if you have it in there. If you don't have it in there, the gun will still cycle, you'll still shoot perfectly fine, but again, you're losing on efficiency, so make sure you keep track of that. Alright? On that token, make sure you never shoot this right here, and this is actually again in the manual, and even if you are in certified, we still never recommend to dry fire just the core or just the firing controls on their own, meaning without the upper receiver properly assembled. What will end up happening is this right here is basically with an adhesive, it's attached onto your lower receiver. If you go ahead and shoot this thing with air, you're going to pop that seal out of there. And again, if your hand is close to it, you are I mean, it's very dangerous. You have a full 800 psi popping out of that little exhaust port right there. So just never do it, you know. So I think it's that simple. All right. At this point, well, we're back to our just our lower receiver. We're gonna break this down. We're gonna take it down to all its components and to tell you what can go wrong. Again, this is more of a troubleshooting video, so we want you to know what are the failure points and how to recognize them. All right. For the most part, if your gun is not recocking, if it's let's say you're taking a single shot and it's not recocking, most likely it is your striker O-ring. All right. So how do we check that? First step, we go ahead and we're already removed at this point. Take out your velocity adjuster. Take out your main drive spring. Your buffer is on here, so make sure you know where that is at all times. We take out our striker, and that's our striker O-ring. I mean, that's all it really takes. This will most likely give you the symptoms of not recocking. A single shot comes out, and that's it. In other markers, in other paintball guns, you might notice it by a burp. Okay. However, the 468 and even the 268 in some variations, having the lock bolt, it might not burp because the lock bolt is doing its job and is catching the bolt back. So this symptom will be seen as a single shot and you have to recock. Okay? Over time, I mean, and I would say this is over a prolonged period of time, this could also be caused by your spring. Your spring has lost its basically force to push it forward far enough and hit the poppet hard enough, and therefore you're not getting enough blowback. But most likely, if you're experiencing that, is your striker O-ring. All right, that's basically the main O-ring or the main seal that's making everything happen. Your secondary one, and perhaps actually the most important one, is your poppet itself, which will give you a different degree of leaking, which you'll hear out of this area. So I mean, again, you can like put the gun up, I wouldn't say right up against your ear, but you can kind of detect where it's coming from, or use a little water squirter and kind of like, you know, pour it over, and if you see bubbles, well, you know where you're leaking from. All right. Okay, so at this point, we've already, number one problem that you could have would be the striker O-ring. All right. Once you get to this point, make sure you inspect. Make sure that we basically put grease on these things. It's lithium grease, so you want to make sure that you re-grease it. Okay. Obviously, after it breaks in, I mean, it will be able to shoot dry. But I mean, of course, how long, right? We want you to be out there. We want you to go with the gun that always goes bang. So keep it properly clean and lubed up. And that's pretty much all there is to say about your striker system and how to maintenance it. At this point, we're at the magazine. something else to mention: your takedown pins. I mean, this is my current marker. I've been using and abusing this for some months now, and my takedown pins just work flawlessly. I mean, they're nice. They're easy to take off by hand. On a brand new 468, I mean, it hasn't had the opportunity to break it in. And of course, there's some things that we do to break it in, so like the firing mechanism, but things like takedown pins, it's just going to require you guys taking it apart, putting it back together, cleaning it, doing your maintenance. If you're having a hard time with any specific pin, go ahead and you can use something like your bolt. Just tap it out of there, you know what I mean? Basically just something like that. It's just a little detent system inside of it that what you want to do is just want to just break past that. It's on a spring, so it's like a little tiny deadbolt that's you know, holding the pin in place. So if you get a little jolt, little like tap on it, it just like it releases, and then you're able to get past it. All right. Again, this is broken in, so I can take everything out by hand, no problems. Okay. When you take this out, when you remove your mag well, we have the trap system. Okay, again, everything is lubed up, so just go ahead and inspect anything. If the grease is dirty, you know, fell in a big pile of dirt and everything is got all dusty and everything, so just clean it up, re-grease it, and that's pretty much it. Okay, so there we go. There's some things that you really don't require maintenance, your latch and all this stuff right here. I mean, unless you have a lot of mud in there or something, you can pretty much just leave it alone and inspect that there's nothing wrong with it. Before we get inside the pop in the valve section, we're going to talk about this spring and the demag activator. This front valve cap is required to operate demags. It basically works very simply. When you insert your demag into your follower, into your mag well, this pushes down on that paddle. Voila, there it goes. I mean, that's how it works. I'm going to go ahead and show you in a slightly better way. Well, I don't know that I'm going to be able to do this exactly, but there we go. Kind of give you an idea of how this sits inside the gun. Okay, you have your trap system. So as this thing goes up, it allows the follower to come up freely, and that's what pushes the rounds up. All right, so yeah. This front cap, however, does not allow you to just do a quick mag. There you go. You can see what that does when it's working properly. All right. This front cap needs to be replaced when you're switching to different magazine types. So if you're going to do the Scarab Arms mod, you need to switch this to either a specific Scarab Arms one or one that you've modified by making this little cross thing on it. Let me show you what. Okay, so this spring right here is basically easily removed. It's just a little spring clip. For the Scarab Arms mod, you just basically, what we do is we have one of these, and it's the same part, just does not have this activator on it, and that allows the latch, basically the detent and latch for the Scarab Arms to go in between these grooves. I mean these two hinge points right here, and that allows it to function. Okay, many of you have already done this on your own with some Dremel and some handiwork. That also works too. All right, so either which way, either be directly from us or yourself. That's what you got to do. You got to have the space for the magazine to travel in between here. Okay, perhaps I can get a Scarab Arms mag over here in a few moments, and I'll show you how that works. All right. To remove your valve pin right here, this is the only thing I think that's left over. I mean, in addition with these two screws, but these you really don't need to have access to them. Scarab Arms mod. See, you ask and you shall receive. All right, let's go ahead and touch base on that first. Okay, as you can see, there's this. This is the detent activator, or whatever you want to call it. It's actually more of a detent. Okay, this latch holds the rounds down. You need somewhere on your gun for that thing to go. So that right there, in essence, goes right in between these two tabs right there. But this, of course, interferes. So that's pretty much it on that. And Another important thing to do is also your takedown pin would also interfere as well. So again, this is all over the forums and Facebook and good places like what is it? I think 468 Owners Group. There's quite a bit of information about this. It's not our own, so it's not hosted by us, but it's basically you guys, the users, people who are putting information out there to, you know, better our sport and what we're doing. So it's a great site for you to visit, and also pictures are up there. I mean, and people's experiences of what they've found with their 468s, and both good and bad, I suppose. I mean, but it's a great place to get help from your fellow player. All right. So enough about the scare arms egg for right now. Okay, cool. All right, the last thing, again, so we're here at the valve. You want to take this out, but this does require a tool. It's a punch, something of some kind. So right here I'm going to use an Allen key. And I don't know how, there we go. It's not really on there, it's not press fit so much, so it should be a fairly easy thing to take out. As you can see, I just basically used an Allen key and kind of like tapped it with my tank. I would recommend to use something else other than a pressurized container to use it as a hammer. It just kind of makes sense to do so. Alright, so this comes right out. And at this point, we would just replace this front cap right here for your other Scarab arms or retro magazine valve cap, okay? This is another point of airworthiness, so you want to make sure that this O-ring right here is in good condition. Now this O-ring here does not have any movement, so this should remain good for a really long time. Obviously if you're switching back and forth, and if you're in a really dirty environment, and well, that might cause some problems, but not, it should, I mean, my point is that you can change it, you can inspect it and make sure that it's not shredded or anything. But it should be fine. A little silicone oil on it may help from time to time. Alright. At this point we are at the poppet. So I mean, this is it. This is all it is, really. Basically there's a flat on it. Well, okay, let's look at what can happen if this has problems or it's wrong or anything. Alright. Basically this is what seals up against your valve. This is, in essence, your firing pin. If this is a real firearm, your striker hits your firing pin, which in turn hits the primer on the bullet. Well, here we don't have any of that. We have just a bullet up in the top, and we have our primer valve here in the bottom. So you hit the firing pin, that opens this thing. Basically, it pops it open. Pop it, it pops it open, and air flows through it, and in turn goes to the chamber and shoots a paintball out. And also part of that gas pressure and air is used to recock and recycle the operation, which is the blowback. Alright. This flat right here is precisely the blowback feature. Basically it goes through the valve, and again, it's just a very small quantity of air that is used for recocking. Most of it is used to shoot the projectile, but that's just flat. When you're reinserting this, okay, so let me show you what you would do to change this out. I believe when you get a 468, you get a couple of these, or one extra one. You just basically remove your valve spring, your valve guide star thing here, and just unscrew it. Unscrew it. You replace this, screw it back on with your new poppet seal. Okay, when you're reinserting it, however, we will tell you that you want to match the flat of your receiver to the flat of the firing pin, basically valve pin, okay? So what you want to do is you want to make sure that's facing up. In fact, you will be able to see it. Of course, I have to. Takes a little dexterity here. You'll be able to see it from the top right there. You can see whether you're putting in there correctly. You want to make sure that you do that, because there's this pin right here through the receiver, and that pin is basically a stop. It's a striker stop, so make sure that you're not banging against your valve. If you're running lower pressure or anything happens, the striker will stop against that pin, before striking your valve. It's just like a little way to make sure that things run reliably for a long period of time. Alright? But it is very important that you put that flat up, or else you're going to have all kinds of problems like this thing. The valve won't close correctly, so I can't even describe what sort of mayhem you'll have, but you'll notice it. Alright. Putting this in, you just want to make sure that the spring aligns to the center part of it. You don't want to put it on the side. That would be kind of problematic. Definitely remember in which direction you took your pin out, because it will help. Now at this point, again, you're able to just either press it by hand, which I'm doing here, or again use anything you have at your disposal to pop it back in. Alright, that's all it takes. I mean, again, it's just being held in there. Obviously when this is pressurized, it's going to be holding on there even more. Alright, I lost my my body seal there in the process, so make sure that you don't do that. Now again, this body seal, you should be getting an extra one in your package as well, in case you lose it. Well, okay. Make sure that if you are replacing it, you remove any of the previous adhesive, or else you're attaching yourself to like a gummy sticker, and you want to put it directly onto the surface of the metal. So just remove it. Something like Goo Gone, or just, you know, peel at it for a little while and you'll get to it. I didn't do that, so this is not really sticking too well. Alright, so again, we're at this point. To replace this, we're going to take this spring clip, which this spring clip, you really have no need to be taking it off or on. There's no need at all. Okay. In fact, what we're going to do, that's just for me, we're going to bend that in there a little bit more so it has a little bit more of a clip feature to it. But again, that's just what I'm doing, just so it assembles a little bit nicer on there. Alright, so that's it on that part. Okay. To reassemble this, it's quite simple. You go ahead and put this forward in front of the rails, take it to the rails, and at this point what you're going to want to do is take your takedown pin on the side, align it only to your first lug. Okay? By I mean the first lug is to the inside face of your first lug. Alright, on your valve cover. Now, you're doing that because you're going to align your trap system to it, so it makes it a lot easier for you. Alright? So we put it in from the top, just like this. Now you're putting it from the top so you can grab this spring clip on there. At the same time, you make sure you're aligned. We can kind of position it, and now you're just going to kind of like find the hole. There we go. It went through both of them because we previously kind of pre-aligned it. Now you see how this is down? All you do at this point is you press it up till you hear the click, and that's it. Looking at the Gen 2 lockable chamber, these adapters are replaceable. If you're using the Retro Mag and Scarab Mag's option, it will be the same collar for it, okay? To gain access to this, you will need to basically take apart part of your gun. Sorry about that. In fact, I can show you that. Alright, to gain access here, you're going to remove your optic. Okay, you have to remove your front screw right here. I already previously removed it right before we got back to this. Remove your front screw, a 3mm Allen key. Reason we're removing the front, it's because we have less distance to travel, so all we do, remove the rear part of your upper receiver, and we can replace this collar at this point. Okay? That's pretty much all it is. There will be different available colors. Currently, we have the Scarab Arms Retro Mag version and the D-Mag. Okay? Each one's specific. This one's specific to the D-Mag because it has a following ramp for the trap system. Again, so definitely recommended to use this. But you do have to break it down to this point to change between magazines. That's just the way it is. D-Mags are a completely different animal, therefore it requires changing pretty much the whole feed system. However, we made it on the 468 pretty accessible and easy to change and move, so that's the benefit of that. Okay, so again, for general maintenance and takedown and working, it's pretty much toolless, but it is not a toolless system to switch between D-mags and retro or scare mags. Alright, let me go ahead and put my nifty optic back on. Not that we need it for anything. I will not be taking some 400-yard shots out at anybody anytime soon. We're going to go ahead and reassemble our 468. I'm going to show you the second method of dry firing and removing an air tank and doing all of that. So that will be a second here. There we go. Put this back in. I kind of went out of sequence here. I probably wanted to assemble my my lower receiver first. But let me go ahead and show you at this point. We're going to hold it in the table there. Okay, so you're going to insert your striker with the bolt carrier pin hole facing up. Okay, we put it there. At this point, you're going to feel some resistance, so you pull the trigger to let it get past that point. Once you do that, you are able to put it in there. Now this is a very good time to put in your bolt carrier pin, because what you're able to do is push it forward, dry fire it, put it all the way forward. Okay, and you want to do that because it's easier to put in your drive spring and whatnot, because you have less spring pressure pushing against you. As you can see, it's very close there. We're going to take our buffer, we put the buffer forward, close this up. At that point, we're good with that. Now, this comes to another part of your marker assembly. We're going to put our bolt in now, so we can do that. You never want to assemble your marker when the bolt carrier pin is forward or when your bolt is forward. Okay, so what you want to do is at this point, you go ahead and cock it back. Yeah, sorry, I have a little bit of, we did a little test of high velocity, and that makes it a little bit harder to do by hand there, so I'm going to go ahead and take it back. There we go. So we lock it back. That will allow you to join up with your upper receiver, press down on it, and there we go. That's it for that part of it. We're going to reassemble our air tank. This is pressurized. And here I'm going to show you another thing to look out for, especially those who are receiving the 468 in their full release format. This charging handle moves back farther than it did on the trade-in models or T68 or anything else. So if you just leave it at this point, this if you have this regulator or this this gauge, it will hit, and therefore you will not be able to cock it, and you're going to say what's going on. So you want to make sure that this is out of the way. Now I recommend that you put it out of the way in such a way that you're still able to remove just like that. Okay, that's what you want to do. You want to make sure that you're able to do your velocity adjustment despite the valve being down here. Now if you get a Ninja Pro regulator, they have a small dial, then it doesn't matter. It can be all around the wherever it seats best, and that's all you have to do. So I definitely recommend that. That's a good option. Alright. Okay, so obviously we put our buttstock guide pin and also this locking mechanism. This is very important to have on there. Make sure you're using it, guys. We don't want you to be pressing your buttstock up against your shoulder and changing the velocity after your chrono. Refs, make sure that this is on the gun when people are out there. You don't want anybody cheating here. Alright, so we put that back on, so this thing is ready to go again, and we're ready to shoot. I told you about a secondary way of dry firing your marker. For whatever reason you want to check that it's cycling properly. You just lubed it and you want to run that lube in before you're playing. There's two ways to do this. Number one way would be to take in a fully loaded magazine, put it inside, okay, at which point you'll have access to the lock bolt, and you would just, you know, let me see, I can probably do it here with two Allen keys, but it's probably not the best. Right, okay, I'm gonna stop that. I'm gonna watch me here for a little while messing with it. So that's one way. Take a fully loaded magazine. This is not, by the way. Take a fully loaded magazine, and you'll take basically an Allen key, anything that fits in between the rail there. You'll see shortly how to do that. Or there is another way. Again, remember what I said. You always want to cock back before taking it apart. Again, this is only for those who are either certified or experienced to do so. Take this out, okay? And I say this because there's no danger. I mean, you're also able to put your finger on the inside and activate the lock bolt without having to shotgun it. But you know what? You're putting your finger in risk of, I don't know, your other hand betraying you and pulling the trigger. I don't know. Something could happen. Alright. So at this point, we are holding up the, I don't know if you can see in the camera here, but we're holding up the lock bolt right there. There will be some future features to do this in an easier way, but right now you're able to do it this way. We're holding up the lock bolt, and we're now able to dry fire. Alright? And there's nothing wrong with it. I mean, this just now became what any paintball gun has been for the past 25 years. It's a paintball gun without eyes and without a lock bolt. So technically, if that's the way you prefer to shoot, which I don't know why, but you're able to do that. So, but again, that's a way to dry fire your marker, your 468, with a Gen 2 lock bolt. That pretty much concludes what we're doing here as far as troubleshooting. There's one other area that I want to mention. There's a possibility of a leak. If you hear a hiss, a small air leak, we have some, basically there's 4 access points to the whole internal drive system, which are 2 set screws in the back and 2 set screws on the front valve. If you have a problem with that, basically call Rap4, call support, and we will give you the best way to take care of that, whether it be sending it back to us and we'll take care of it, or perhaps we can guide you through it on how to get rid of that leak. We check for it. We are trying to be very thorough about it, but every once in a while something can happen. So we've seen very few cases of that, but it can, and that's just basically your air channels that go from your ASA to your valve. They're sealed up. They have a system in there. But other than that, that pretty much concludes everything we have to do about the 468. Be safe. Oh, I'm sorry, I almost forgot something. This is perhaps the most important factor of why it is so important that you always cock back the gun. Okay? Again, I shouldn't be hearing about anybody having this problem because you're not going to be cracking it open with the air tank on there unless you know what you're doing. But Murphy, this thing. If we dry fire this and you just go on and take it apart, you're going to hear this thing. It's going to pop. You can see that. Now, that's happening right there because the lock bolt is catching the bolt back. It's not catching the striker back. By the time you dry fired it or you clicked, the striker is already in a position to fire. It's not being held back by anything. It's not, there's nothing securing it other than the lock bolt. Alright? So what we just did right here, well, number one, we would have lost our body seal because as soon as we shotgunned it, this thing just popped it out of there. So that's the first thing that can happen. Number two, we could have lost our body pin. Number three, scare something out of somebody. It's not really, well, again, it is dangerous. It's a dangerous thing to happen, so make sure it never happens to you. And again, it should not be happening because you're removing your air before you're working or shotgunning your gun. Alright everybody, so now we're back to the 468, all built up, it's ready to go. by this time you know exactly what to do and pretty much how to troubleshoot everything. So now it's the time to go out there and have some fun with your 468. Thanks a lot, guys. Have a good one.
Perfect.